Welcome to episode 17 of Sports Talk on Our Time. My name is Frank Verdecchia. I'm here with the legendary Jerry DiPaola, and we also have Pittsburgh Trib Steeler writer, former colleague Chris Adamski with us tonight. Chris, thank you very much for coming on board.
Yeah, legendary Jerry. I like that for sure. Legendary Jerry, legendary Frank. Actually, I am honored to be in the company of the two legends.
This is a third in a series of Trib writers. We started with Gorman and Rudder, Adamski. I don't know who's going to be next. It's going to be a secret.
There ain't many people left of the staff, Jerry. So I don't know.
So I was going to say we're running out. We're running out of them right now.
Well, Chris, you've covered everything over the years. Your time at AP, your time at the Trib, Penn State, Steelers. Let's talk about the Steelers right off the bat. 4-1, first place. Everybody's talking. Oh, they're going to run away with the division. They're going to be in the Super Bowl. What's your impression of the early part of the season?
Here's the thing: is I do feel like that from where they were week 1 and week 2, week 3, even after the Patriots game, you really had an era of. I mean, they were 28th, and they're still our yardage numbers aren't great on offense or defense overall. Still, they're a little below average, but they have 28th and 29th in total yardage and offense and defense. And you kind of felt like that it was unsustainable to get those 5 takeaways every game, like they get against New England, and they've been outgained in every game. Those first 4 weeks. So you kind of felt like it was like, I don't know if this is sustainable, but everything, to borrow Tomlinism, because I just am trained now to use my Tomlinism, there's a lot of arrows pointing up, and a lot of the areas that after week 1 or week 2 that we thought were really big weaknesses have gotten literally, I think, better every week. The offensive line, the run game, and the run defense in particular are probably 3 things that after the Jets game and certainly after the Seahawks game, you felt like this team ain't it, right? And I think you can almost go linearly. All 5 games they've played, they've been better and better. I know the Browns stink. That's part of it in this past one. But you can feel a lot. I think right now you can finally look and see maybe this Broderick Jones maybe he's okay. I'm not ready to say he's like a Pro Bowl or anything, but, not bench him, which I think if that week 1 against the Jets, if that would have kept going on, if that would have been 5 games of that, I think we'd probably have a different left tackle right now talking about, right? So
he was a draft bust, they said, after the first game of the season. Now all of a sudden he's protecting the blind side of the 41-year-old quarterback, and we're going to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the nature of our business, as you guys know.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, you got it.
It goes week to week. Another thing, Chris, I see too on defense, they just seem like they're getting that swagger back. I hadn't seen the last 5 years. Like, it looks like Harmon, Benton had his best game probably last week, the week before, and he's still in with Hayward. And you see Queen making tackles at the line of scrimmage and not 5 yards down the line of scrimmage. What do you say about the defense that came around to get it to where it's at right now from where it was maybe 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, they have collected a lot of guys that are playmakers. Now they all have, or you can go down the list and say, well, this guy's past his prime. Maybe Peyton Wilson isn't. He was a college player. You can kind of make a qualifier for almost every one of them, but whether by design or not, they've got this group where Jalen Ramsey, the guy makes plays. We've seen him make plays, right? His name is Big Play Slay. I know he's old, but his literal name is making big plays. Of course, Watt's been here doing his thing. Cam Hayward, another probable future Hall of Famer. Patrick Queen was the highest paid free agent they've ever signed and the highest paid linebacker last year's cycle. Like I said, Peyton Wilson was a national player of the year. You can go up and down the entire roster. These guys that they've made. So like the 5 turnover thing against New England is going to happen every week. They didn't get any turnovers against Cleveland, actually. But it's not an accident either. It's not. I do think this team will be near the top of the league in takeaways, and that's part of what this defense is. Now, I don't think you can get by giving up 380 yards a game like they were those first 3 weeks. But I think there is maybe something to there were so many new pieces to the defense, so many new starters, veterans, draft picks, and then you had injuries those first few weeks. Finally, this game was the first game everybody was healthy and also, had been together and played together for a while. And so maybe there is something here actually where this defense can be, a top tier. Maybe not the best in the league, but maybe a top 10 defense.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead, Frank.
I was going to ask you, I saw Watt got injured at the end of the game yesterday. Was that anything serious, or do they think that's just like a day-to-day thing?
Yeah, I don't think there's any. I mean, they didn't practice or anything yet. Nothing's been mentioned or talked about anywhere on it. So Tuesday's the only day they're going to practice this week. So we'll see if it comes to that. But it seems like, especially in the short week, I'm sure it would have been. I don't think they would hide it. In other words, so I'm sure it's Matt is okay.
Chris, the NFL is notorious for teams being great one week and going back toward the bottom of the standings the next week, or vice versa. Now, Buffalo's, as I sit here, is losing to Atlanta 21-7. Okay, who's good in the AFC, and where do the Steelers stack among the best teams in the AFC?
I mean, that if you're going to make a case, the Steelers could, make a deep playoff run this year. That might be the top of your list. Is that I don't know who the best, who is significant. For years and years now, for the last 3 or 4 years, Baltimore, Kansas City, and Buffalo, as everybody knows, were kind of the class of the AFC, and you could take your pick and who was 1, 2, or 3 or whatever. Usually ended up the Chiefs by the end of the season, but in terms of the regular season, you had to get past at least one of those, probably 2 of those, maybe all 3 of them, if you ever want to get where you want to go. Obviously, the Ravens this year, they're looks like they're a dumpster fire all the way around. Kansas City, I don't know what we have. Again, the week-to-week overreaction. All of a sudden, they back to being the old Chiefs, or are they not? I don't know. I mean, Buffalo has been they were winning until last week, and everybody, the narrative watching that was a big win for the Patriots. It wasn't so much, maybe Buffalo's vulnerable. It was more like, New England's arrived. I don't know. And like I said, in real time, if people will be watching this, we'll find maybe know a little bit more about talking about whether Buffalo is really not for real or not. So, that's the thing is you can talk yourself into, without being a Pollyanna or a homer or whatever, you can actually talk yourself into maybe the Steelers could actually make some noise in the AFC because, as of right now, I wouldn't pick them to beat Buffalo at the moment if they played, or even Kansas City for that matter. But it sort of seemed like Baltimore and Cincinnati aren't threats this season. They already beat New England. They got the Chargers coming up. Maybe we'll learn something there. Denver, what do you think of Denver? I don't know. Yesterday they didn't exactly
pretty good.
On fire.
Yeah, but that was over in England.
Yeah. And the Steelers host the Colts too, so they'll have a chance to answer these questions a little more, playing the Chargers and the Colts, and then later on, I don't know the rest of the AFC North. Although I don't know if there's anybody there that really.
What's the moral of the story? Let the season play out.
Yeah.
Like I said, Broderick Jones was a bust after week 1. Now all of a sudden he's great. Okay, the Steelers are 4-1. It's only 5 games. There's 12 to go. A lot can happen in those 12 games because they're playing some decent teams. And I think Baltimore, may not win the division, but they're going to come back and be a team to be reckoned with when Jackson is healthy.
Yeah, and I do think I've said it's not breaking any, but I always like to say the team in December is different. Now we're in October now. The team, all 32 teams in September versus what they are in December. I don't say it's unrecognizable, but it's different. So this is starting to evolve now. And once you get to maybe week 8 or so, I think you have a better idea of which teams are the true contenders, which teams aren't the true contenders. And like I said, if the Steelers win Thursday, at that point, it's just like it's so early. It's crazy to think that way, but only being 6 games into the season, but it's almost like hard to envision them not winning. That would almost be an epic collapse if they somehow.
It would be.
Right. I don't see how you don't win the division if you win Thursday. And I think a big difference, you got to say Rodgers. They didn't have Rod. They haven't had a quarterback like Rodgers since Ben. And plus this team is upgraded in so many areas than it was Ben's last couple seasons here. So Rodgers seems like he's the X factor in it all. If he can keep playing at a high level like he seems he still can and doesn't get hurt, that could be what finally wins a playoff game, it seems like, since 2016.
Yeah, there's so many there's some of the superlatives or some of the stats you can look at what he's done in 5 games compared to everybody else who's been a quarterback for the Steelers since 2021 when Ben retired. I mean, in terms of the touchdown passes, QB rating, things like that. Think about it. He had more touchdown passes through week 4 than Kenny Pickett ever had in a full season for the Steelers. Yeah, it's just the production's there. Now, is it the route, whatever it is, but I also think that the way the Steelers have played, and to Kenny Pickett's credit, he was known as 4th quarter Kenny for a reason. But the way the Steelers are constructed, if it's a close game in the 4th quarter, like seems like every Steelers game is in the time. Having the 41-year-old 4-time MVP, he might not have the arm he had when he was 31. He might not be, mobility might whatever. But I think the Steelers, if you're the Steelers fan, you take your chances thinking like, well, we got a guy who's gonna get the job done.
He still has the brain. That's just
Yeah.
the arm and everything else. If they keep him upright, I think he can still read defenses. He can still take things in stride and not get too carried away. He's perfect for the Steelers as they march maybe toward the playoffs.
And he's highly accurate on top of that too.
Oh, yeah.
Those touchdown passes he threw yesterday, like I said, it's something you haven't seen here in a long time.
That went
Stuff
across
like
his
that.
body was a magnificent throw. Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Hayward.
Even to have the wherewithal to throw that and to know you have the arm to get that, because that's one of those balls like you watch some of the replays. I'm like, man, like I don't even know how you because you'd be, if it was a young quarterback and he threw that ball as intercepted, you'd be crushing him for even trying that throw, right? Because he's throwing across his body to into the end zone and not being safe with the ball. But he knew to do it. Like I still think that the best throw he made all year was the one that Freiermuth couldn't catch when he's rolling to his right. He threw that ball like literally like 55 yards in the air to right at the sideline, right in his hands, and Freiermuth didn't catch it. That was week 2 against Seattle.
Chris, talking about Freiermuth, what's going on with Freiermuth as far as the offense goes? Is Darnell Washington taking his place because he can block better? Or?
Yeah, I think what happened was, or I know partially what happened was that against the Vikings, they had the game plan. They were going to bring out the heavy package, right, and bring out the Spencer Anderson, the 6th offensive lineman, essentially a 7th offensive lineman with Darnell. And then it was just working so well that they used it even more than they thought they were going to use or planned to use or intended. Now, part of it was game; they got a 2-touchdown lead and things like that, so it lent itself more to doing that. And if you're behind or need to score fast or something, so that was part of it. But I think that kind of maybe opened up everybody's eyes to, well, this is working, and it's kind of like Mike Tomlin like almost oversold it at the press conference. He's like, well, 4-3 team, you can't have a tight end. Like, oh yeah, tight ends never block. Like the tight end can't block a 4-3 end. Like, what are we all of a sudden out of nowhere? Like that's impossible. Why would you ever think of that? I mean, you can't do that. You're an extra offensive lineman. But it is working for them, and now it worked for them 2 games in a row, and you're finally seeing Darnell Washington as it's working in terms of the run game, in terms of the blocking that he's doing, and it's also you're seeing him make some plays in the way he just sort of like fee-fi faux fum when he gets the ball and like steps on opposing like linebackers and DBs and stuff. It's kind of crazy. So I think that's a big part of it. Yeah. And then, I mean, when you go out and get a Jonnu Smith in late June, I mean, there's only so many snaps to go around. So I think it's contributing to all those things. And Jonnu's more of a, can be well, they haven't really used him this way. So it's kind of weird to say, but he can be kind of more of a downfield threat. And Darnell is a unique human being, a massive man who can move like he can. And Connor has his role too. So Freiermuth is getting squeezed out. I don't know how long-term it is. I mean, if this lasts all season, then I don't know how you could bring him back next year at his salary. But, again, teams are different by December than they are now, and kind of see how it plays out. And I think they're going to let this ride through and carry it out as long as they keep winning and keep having an effective offense and a good running game.
Chris, I have one more question for you, and then we can talk about your 2 favorite teams, and I'm not talking about Mars. 2 favorite schools, I mean. Let's just say, hypothetically, Justin Fields had accepted their contract offer, if they even made one. I assume they did. If he accepts their contract offer, Aaron Rodgers is not here today, right? And then we're going with Fields, and who knows, it could be – I'm sorry, the Steelers could be 2-4, right?
Yeah, I don't know how much I think they kind of kept it as at an arm's length and kept them sort of like a jilted ex-girlfriend or something. Kind of keep her as a spare backup or something. I don't know if they were ever enamored. They don't think they're ever going to give, depending on what you call starter money. And nowadays that could,
So they were offering him less than starter money, figuring he would turn it down. Yeah, hoping he would turn it down, or
almost slow playing the negotiation and playing lip service to wanting to keep him or whatever, but kind of knowing probably there'd be he'd have a better option. I mean, look, not like Russell Wilson signed for much money either. Jerry, you did this for a lot of years. I think a lot of I don't think Art Rooney II's, I don't think he's lying in any sense when he has those sit down or in any way. I don't mean to imply that. I just think people take that and run with it. Oh, he said they want to keep one of the quarterbacks. If the owner says they want to keep one of the quarterbacks, that means they're definitely keeping one of the quarterbacks. If you remember, Art sat down with the
Right.
media that a couple
He
weeks
made
ago.
it sound like they wanted to sign Fields or Wilson, right?
Yeah, so everybody took that as gospel, which I don't blame. I mean, the owner said it; it's on the record, but I think it's pretty obvious they never really were like, maybe one of these guys is a backup, maybe, but they probably also knew that just the intangible that you couldn't really make Russell Wilson a backup right after he was a starter the year before. It'd be kind of an odd situation. I think feels kind of the same way after you kind of already, quote unquote, benched him the year before too.
So they had a feeling that Rodgers was going to be available eventually, I guess, right? Because if they really didn't want Wilson or Fields, they had to sign somebody. And who was it going to be?
They painted themselves in a corner for sure if it wasn't going to be Rodgers. And that looked like for a while. I don't know. I mean, maybe I got the impression about mid-May there that they didn't know for sure. I'm like, how could they not know? Because it's just like, how can you possibly start OTAs, with Mason Rudolph and that's it, in a rookie or whatever, at that point what they had. Skylar Thompson was it's just don't have a starter on your roster and to think it could drag out all the way into July. But, I think Tom, when even one of the press conferences said is it something effective. Oh, I knew something you guys didn't know. So how much of a ironclad that was or how, but judging by their actions, I guess they never got a true starting quarterback. So they must have known they were going to get him no matter what, I suppose.
No, Chris, you like I said, you've covered a lot of things, and you were there on the ground floor when James Franklin was hired at Penn State. Talk a little bit about your opinion of what happened there. 15 days after they were the number 3 team in the country, they fired their coach. That got to be a record for any sport anywhere.
It really is crazy when you think about it in those terms. That where they were on that day was September 27th, and then have a touchdown lead in overtime, and against a top 5 opponent or top 6 opponent, whatever Oregon exactly was at that point. And a big emotional would have been a big comeback, would have been a big story. They finally beat a top. Oregon might have been 6, top 5 team.
I think they were 6. You're right. They were 6.
So, but it would have been a big win, and it would have got kind of that stigma erased from Franklin's, or at least mitigated, because they would have had to still play Ohio State later in the season and still do, but in Indiana later in the season, who's going to be, it looks like maybe a top 5 team, but at least it would have finally, because I'm sure there had to be so much pressure on James for that, and then just speaking as more of a Penn State alum, it was like becoming a punchline, like for being like a loser. Like it was like they made the national semifinals last year.
Right.
That part is the most remarkable part of, more so even that they were ranked number 2 as of 15 days before he got fired. The fact they were a reigning national semifinalist and then still ranked number 2, and then lost the game to a top 10 team in overtime, and then lost 2 one-possession games after that. But when kind of the succession of those games, to lose the game to Oregon, it's kind of like, here we go, same old Penn State, right? I mean, I'm sure you guys were thinking. I'm sure every college football fan in the country was thinking it. And I assure you, all the Penn State fans were thinking it, assuming it. And
especially the ones with the money to write the checks, right?
Yes, exactly. So already that put everything, and there's kind of 1 or 2 ways that a team can respond after a kind of a gut punch like that, because they're not dumb. The players all know. I mean, but they all, most of them came back, with checks in hand to chase the national title, and they're pretty open about it. And that's what they were there for. And once that kind of, not that they were eliminated from the race at that point, but they could have, either batten down the hatches and made it a turning point in the season, or they could have went in the tank. And it sort of seems like, judging by what happened the next 2 weeks, the 2 pretty bad teams, the latter happened. And so it happened in that order, those 3 losses in a row. I could see how it happened, or how the firing happened, because it just seemed untenable at that point, where it just seemed like it was going to start getting ugly. I mean, they were booing him off the field, and it just seemed like, just for the entire, I think almost at that point, and you're right, it happened so rapidly to a point, but I think, he probably wanted put out of his misery too at that point too.
Well, it seems like Penn State, though. I mean, I was talking to Jerry about this earlier. You look at Nebraska, take a school like Nebraska. Now, I'm taking things out of context here right now a little bit, but just bear with me. But you look at Nebraska, they won 3 national championships in the 90s. Osborne retires. They hire Solich, and Solich goes to the BCS championship game. Steve Peterson comes with a match and lighter fluid and fires him. hires Bill Callahan, and they haven't been the same since. They're not no better than Pitt's program, and it's a similar situation. Can you think about Lincoln, Nebraska, Happy Valley, Pennsylvania? That's all you got. It's Nebraska football all the time, just like Penn State. And I don't know, maybe Penn State, you should be wondering, like, I don't like James Franklin. I thought he's so arrogant that he just made me sick to look at. But at the same time, I think the guy did win 10 to 11 games a year. And is this a mistake that you're trying to roll the dice thinking you're going to come up big with another coach?
I mean, it's definitely a risk, that's for sure. Because whatever, and that's all big part of it is the top 5 losses, the inability to quote unquote break 1-10 against Ohio State, and go down the list of everything. And it's kind of crazy. They never made a playoff. They're always in that top 12 that would have made the playoffs if they expanded the playoffs a decade ago. And then they finally make the Final Four when they go through 12. But even then, it's just the way. It's just hilarious that Penn State makes a postseason run, but yet still lost to Ohio State last year. Still lost the Big Ten title game. Still lost as soon as they played a power. I know it's conference, and their names on the copy. I mean, a power conference.
Power 4 team, yeah, right.
Yeah, it only went that far because they beat the likes of Minnesota in the regular season. They beat Boise State and SMU in the playoffs. It's just like you can't make this up. It was the most hashtag Penn State season in the world you've ever seen. But it is a risk. You're right. I mean, Nebraska twice. I mean, Solich and Bo Pelini were going 9-4 every year, and Nebraska's like, nah, that's not good enough for us. And they took a risk, and they've been in an abyss since. I mean, they've been just that they can't even they would kill for 9 wins. They'd be if that happened this year, how happy they'll be with 9 wins. But there's all Gus Malzahn at Auburn. I mean, there's all kind of teams that have done the Dan Mullen with Florida. Yeah. Similar situations where they were winning, but not enough for the fan base or the program, whatever it is. So it's definitely a risk. There's a chance that this thing goes down, and even if there's a chance for 2 or 3 years because you make a transition here that it'll go down, and so if it comes back up, but it might not ever come back up. Look Tennessee wasn't like they fired somebody that wasn't winning enough, but Tennessee was winning national titles, and they went through about a 15, 20-year period where they were probably 500 overall. In a program where they probably thought that under Philip Fulmer in the 90s and 80s and everything, and Johnny Majors before that was a considered of it. But Mark Richt at Georgia. Now that's an example where it went the other way, where they had pretty much James Franklin for a decade, and we're going 10-3 every year. Couldn't win the SEC, couldn't get above Alabama, just like Penn State can't get above Ohio State. So they finally, cut ties with Mark Richt, and then they hire Kirby, and here they are, and they were national power, won 2 national titles. So
it's the landscape of the college football and of sports these days, where it's instant gratification. If you can't make me a championship, my school a championship school, we don't want you here anymore. This is going back into the 60s, but Chuck Noll was 1-13 his first year in 1969. What if Dan Rooney, had lost his mind and said, "We can't have this. We're better than this. We gotta start winning again." And then what would have happened if they fired Chuck Noll after his first year, like they fired that poor guy, the Tennessee Titans, after his second year, right? What's his name, Callahan?
Yeah, Callahan. Yeah.
Take Pitt for example. They fired Dave Wannstedt. Figured, we're going to make Pitt into a national title contender. Here we are 14 years later, only 1 conference championship, and they're no better off now than they were when they got rid of Wannstedt.
Yeah, and I do think there's something to be said for, you should, Wisconsin fired Paul Chryst, another Pitt connection here.
And now they're struggling, right?
And he did well there. That's the thing. Yeah,
another example.
Paul's a good man. He's one of my favorites.
They were winning 9 and 10 games every single year. Now, yes, they weren't winning the Big Ten. They weren't, but they were. There's something to be said for knowing who you are and having some self-awareness.
Exactly.
And I definitely think, I can talk about it as a Penn State alum, talk about it as a reporter, whatever, but there definitely is something where Penn State needs to know, hey, we're probably not ever going to be Alabama of the the Nick Saban era or Ohio State on a year-to-year basis, right? Being top 10 consistently, 3 out of 4 years on average under Franklin, that wasn't good enough, quote unquote. I don't know if you could look in the mirror and you say we are well, not
We
we are Penn. We're Penn State. We are Penn. What are we here? Are we a top 2 program in the country? Or are we like a top 10 program in the country? But that being said, it's like it's weird. It's like if Franklin would have like won the Big Ten a couple more times and it made a national title game even, and then sprinkled in a 5-7 and a 6-6 or something like that, he'd probably still be here, right?
Right.
So I don't know.
Well, you look at it too, though. He has elite talent year after year, and the kind of recruiting classes they're bringing in, and he's not like we're talking about saying, well, they're not happy because they're not winning national championships, they're not getting here. But if you go through and look at all his recruiting classes over the years, at least one time he should have won a national championship. You're at Penn State, you got 110,000 people there at night, you got unlimited funds, you've got 4- and 5-star players up and down your roster, you've got one running back gets hurt, another All-American follows behind him, and he keeps on. He kept coming up short, and it's kind of like the Steelers. They want to get rid of Mike Tomlin. Penn State has those standards, the way Steeler fans have their standards with Tomlin. And I mean, I'm not really surprised they got rid of him. I just think that he, personality-wise, too, didn't help himself either.
Arrogance hurt him a lot.
Yeah.
His arrogance.
And it's funny you talk about the Steelers because I feel like, and you can make the case that for a blue blood college team, or however you want to term it, in an NFL team, winning 10 games every single year. Like the Steelers and Penn State win exactly 10 games every single year. Never any more, rarely any less. It's great. It's good to win 10 games, but it's also like this one time we just break through this like mold and what it is. And it's just kind of funny how they both just seem to win 10 games every year. And Penn State lost to Ohio State, Michigan every year, and the Steelers would lose first round of the playoffs every year.
Well, standard is the standard, as Mike Tomlin says. So,
Let's Frank, let's move on to Pitt and your favorite quarterback, Mason Heinzel.
Mason Heinzel, yeah, 2 games, Jerry. I mean, what can you say about him? It's
I made the joke last week that they're getting ready to start the Heisman campaign for Mason, and now that he beats Florida State on the road, the Heisman may not even be good enough for him. This guy's going to be the greatest quarterback. A year ago, Eli Holstein was Mason Heinzel, right?
Yep.
Right. Well, and Mason's played very well, and I give him a lot of credit. The kid, a smart, a good head on his shoulders. I've spoken to him a few times before I retired. I think he has a real bright future. But we also thought that about Eli Holstein, and now he's a backup. Let's see how the season plays out. I mean, we're halfway through it now. They got some more difficult games coming up. But it's made Pitt an interesting team now, a relevant team, because they have the freshman quarterback. They're 4-2, and they have a chance to be 7-2 going into the Notre Dame game. They got Syracuse, NC State, and Stanford are the next 3 games. Now, 2 of those 3 are on the road, but I can see. I tell you what, out of the next 3 games, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost one of them. But if they win them all 3, you're 7-2 going into Notre Dame here on November 15th, the 50th anniversary of Tony Dorsett's big game against Notre Dame. That'll be quite a spectacle.
Well, it's really something that, like we were talking about 15 days ago, Penn State was rolling, and Pitt looked like they were going to win maybe 3 games, and they got a quarterback that can't throw a pass. Then all of a sudden like I was telling Jerry, Heinzel, or however you say his last name, it's almost as hard as mine to say, but he was the 60th ranked quarterback.
Right.
60th ranked quarterback in the 2025 recruiting class. 60. Pitt was his only Power 4 offer. And what I saw in Holstein that really let me down after last year was that I saw just a different arm movement. I saw balls that are being thrown that look like they're being aimed instead of being thrown. He missed on so many passes. He came up short so many times. And I'm watching this kid play. It's only 2 games. Like I said, he could totally dump on Saturday, and this could be it. But I see a kid back there who's throwing with better mechanics, throwing with confidence. He's 18 years old. 15 days ago, he was the kid at the end of the bench with a headset on. Now he's the man. And to see what he did in that Florida State game, the first interception, okay, you could call that a punt. The second one was after a blocked punt, and he threw it in the end zone. And he easily could have just folded right there. And he didn't. He came out in the second half. And this is kind of attitude you actually need there from what Holstein, like you said last year, you're right. Holstein was the man, but he looked like something just, fell by the wayside with him. And
Yeah, there's an injection of excitement for sure when you get a freshman quarterback, because there's the, the same thing could happen, but then it's like you already said, the same thing happened last year, and there's that definitely, him winning the job, Eli, last year, it's a little bit different. He was a red shirt, he had already moved on, so whatever happened, I don't know, because I don't pretend to know, but the impression is at least that Alabama didn't think he was good enough after a year. He didn't think he was good enough to make Alabama after a year. I don't know. At least this situation, he's a true freshman, and he comes here, it's his first college action and everything like that. But you're right. I mean, you took it out of my mouth, Frank. I was saying the 15 day. Think about 4 p.m. on September 27th. Pitt had just blown a 17-point lead at home to a man opponent, and Penn State's about to play for a top 5 matchup in prime time, and if somebody would have said there's going to be a coach fired in Pennsylvania here in 15 days, I think we would put our money in terms of
maybe the Temple coach.
Yeah.
Well, Frank and I have nothing to do on Saturday night, so we're texting back and forth after the Pitt game Saturday night. And Frank brought up the possibility, Pitt would have been 6-0 if Narduzzi had been smart enough to play Heinzel from day one. I disagree with that, because you don't know. It's all only speculation. And Eli Holstein was not a bum last season. He was hurt, but it's pretty hard to pull. He was paid $1.5 million or whatever it was to come back to Pitt this year. Maybe that part of the reason he was playing. But if they really thought that Mason was going to be the guy that could be a day one starter and not put him behind the 8 ball, they would have been playing Mason. But they had faith in Holstein because he had a background of playing well last season.
I mean, Jerry, to tie it all together, you're talking earlier about week to week, and the Steelers are terrible after week 1, and now they're Super Bowl contenders. Think about it last fall. Not only, I remember for a few weeks there was like, oh my God, the Steelers have to offer Russell Wilson extension right now. They got to make sure they pay all the money. And then it was like, oh my
now
God,
he's on the bench.
Holstein is going to take NIL money from Florida or whatever. Florida
He's going to go back to Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama. When Pitt has to keep this kid no matter what, and it's crazy how
let the seasons play out. Let's see what happens before we lose our minds.
That's the first thing anyone I know I've talked to the last couple of days is, this kid's just going to be good just so he can go sign with Penn State next year or something, or you never know, Chris. The way things go in 2 weeks, maybe Pat Narduzzi will be Penn State's next coach.
Oh yeah, right. They burned down Beaver Stadium if that happened. There's people up there for sure.
It's sad that the modern NIL though that it is if Heisel, whatever his name is, plays this way the rest of the season. I mean that is going to be a big narrative or a big problem or potential issues. If he's that good, can Pitt keep him? It's sad.
A problem every offseason these days. Every offseason, you have to worry about whether your best players are coming back or not. And Heinzel's going to be one of those guys you worry about.
Yeah, and look at the money that these kids, like the McKee. So this is what I got from a secondhand source. The McKeesport running back who was going to Penn State and just turned it down. Well, he was already having second thoughts because supposedly Notre Dame and Alabama were going to double the money Penn State was going to pay him. So what do you do? I mean, why even go to class if I'm going to get, $1.2 million to play and I'm 18 years old? I just go get a good financial advisor. Say, here, take this. Maybe I'll have a good season. Take the next one, and after a couple years, hell, I already got $10 million.
It's professional football. It's only college football because these kids supposedly have to go to college classes, but it's professional ball. They're getting paid for it, and they're going to go just like any NFL free agent. They're going to go to the highest bidder, and whether you like it or not, that's the way it's going to be now forever.
Right. I don't know what model we'll see here a decade from now if it changes, but it's almost as if it's like these are just like entities that are like a professional football team. They're sub-licensed, like the Pitt, the logo and the name. University lets them, associate and attach that name to them. And it's great because think all the. In theory, like the UFL is a quote unquote better better players, right? They take the second best college players every year and make the USFL or whatever. But no one ever watched those games, Because we're used to watching Pitt and Penn State, Alabama, whoever you're cheering for, or whatever teams you're used to watching is being good. So it's almost as if it's turning professional football and it's like, okay, we're Ohio State's football team, but we're not really like a extracurricular activity of the university or anything
I
like
still
that.
say college football is a great sport to watch. I mean, yeah, these kids are getting paid right now, and it's a different landscape. But it's still a great sport to watch. And that Florida State Pitt game on last Saturday, very entertaining game, up and down. You didn't know how it was going to end. I think still a great product. And if you don't mind that the guys are getting paid, I don't care if the guys are getting paid. If I had a son who was good enough to play college football, I tell him go to the highest bidder. Do the best you can for yourself. And anybody who doesn't is a fool. It's pro football, and to me, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, we root for uniforms now. That's it. You root for You don't even know who's on the team year after. You got to really study it to see, okay, who are these linebackers? I knew there was Kyle Lewis here last year, and Biles and Lovelace, and now I got Jones, Verdecchia and someone else. And
basketball seems even more like that. Like,
right.
And I mean, I don't know. I mean, think about Robert Morris, right? I mean,
they lost their five starters are gone. Yeah. Poor Andy Toole. You're a really, really good coach, really, really good man. And he knew. I interviewed him right after they lost to Alabama in the NCAA tournament. I says, "What are you going to do now? In this landscape?" He says, "I think I'm going to lose all my players," and he did. So.
Yeah, that's just the way it is now. It's about how much money do you have, and I assume Penn State has to have bushels and bushels of it compared to what Pitt has.
Compared to most schools have.
Yeah,
well, enough to pay $50 million apparently to just to tell a guy not to coach. So
well, supposedly he has to look for a job, and
that would be deducted.
If he gets a TV job, it would be deducted then from there. So maybe he'll go out and get it. I would not get a job. I don't know if I would.
I know. That's like the caviar version of unemployment fraud. Like, I heard of my resume. I sent my resume at the University of Florida. What else you want from me? I mean,
but I read if he doesn't go looking for a job, then the payment would be less.
That's what unemployment.
One of the conditions.
Jerry, that's what unemployment told me after I left the Trib. So they said I had to go looking for a job.
They paid you anyway, right?
That's right. After my my buyout from the Trib was James Franklin, So
the boosters had paid you off. Yeah.
Well, I got to tell you guys, sitting down with our former Trib colleagues the last 3 weeks have been tons of fun. This is what it is. Everyone seems to be better than the last one, and
I'll make sure I'll tell Joe and Gormy that.
I don't mean it that way. I put my mouth again. I think getting you guys on with us, because when Frank and I started this out like in July or whatever it was were just 2 idiots just talking about sports. Now we got guys,
3 idiots talking. So
now we got guys with boots on the ground. My boots aren't on the ground anymore.
Right, getting credibility on this show now, Jerry.
Absolutely.
This just isn't SteelersDepot.net or something. This is sports talk on our time.
That's right. Well, Chris, thanks so much for taking time tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Chris.
It's really nice to touch base with you and talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Take care.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. We'll get you before the end of the season.